and I'm the Interim President and CEO for Infrastructure Ontario. Welcome. Thank you, Godin and McCarthy's, for constantly, through this WLI program, constantly offering this great space. We really do appreciate that. For those of you that have not been at one of our WLI luncheons or meetings before, maybe can I just get just a quick show of hands if this is your first time? Quite a few newbies, so welcome. Who we are and what we do. The Women's Leadership Initiative, I've had the pleasure of co-chairing that group for the last year with Emma West, who's here, and we've just resigned our co-chairship to Ornella and Meg Davis, so pass that torch, and we received the torch from Leslie Wu and Godin Sibe. And what the group has really done over the last couple of years is start to get the dialogue going on leadership for women, by women, within the context of our community and how and why and what we need to do to continue that dialogue. So today is a great and wonderful example of the need to continually progress the dialogue of leadership for women at the board level. So we've talked a lot about just career progression. We do many conversations and ideas and thoughts of bringing women in the spotlight. And I think outside you would have, when you came, you would have probably seen our production of the Champions in the Spotlight. This was a fantastic initiative that was 2 years in the making of bringing our championship team together, leaders in the community of women that we have here in Toronto. The other key initiative that we started, oh, there's Godin. Godin, I already said thank you and how much we love you. Yeah. Sorry, I was looking for you, but where is she? The other key initiative that we started last year and more to come is our She With He program. And so for many of you that were a part of that launch and that pledge of ensuring that women find a way with men in our community to lead through varying examples of actually helping our female leaders become great leaders, of giving the training that they need, of giving exposure that they need, but also having our female leaders frankly step up as well and do what they can to work with our male counterparts to progress that. So today, I'm incredibly pleased to be able to introduce our speakers for this afternoon. We've got an unbelievable lineup of panelists, as you have seen. And before I introduce them, and I will take some time to introduce them very fully because their resume and their bios are fantastic. And as we walk through the panel, I'm sure they'll tell you a little bit more about their day-to-day lives. But it's impressive from a board and a leadership perspective that you get to know who they are and what they do. Why are we here? Truly from a practical piece. I'm going to have you do a little hands up again. Who here is currently or has sat on an association board? Keep those hands up. Who here is currently, if you've been on an association board, keep your hands up. Who here is currently and or has sat on an association board and a not-for-profit board? Who here has currently sat on an association or not-for-profit or an agency board? Keep your hands up high if you've done all three. And then who here has sat on association, not-for-profit, agency, and corporate board? Okay, so what you will have noticed is kind of the statistics, actually. There is many great opportunities and many women stepping up to start to sit on association boards, which is a great first step, and working with their community. Great women working on not-for-profit boards and doing the wonderful work that we need within all of our communities. Wonderful women starting to put themselves in play from an agency perspective and doing kind of a private and public partnership piece. And as the hands kept coming down, there still is about only 15% or less, depending on the corporation, of females that are part of corporate boards. And that number has not increased over the years. So notwithstanding that, we've got still not the same levels of females that we need on corporate boards to help bring the diversity, to help bring the conversation, to ensure that the dialogue occurs, that number hasn't changed. So we at WLI, the key initiative that we are looking forward to doing over the next couple of years is helping to find a way to change that dialogue and find a way to start to change those statistics however we can. And today is a start of maybe some training, maybe some education, maybe some knowledge for all of you here, because My sense is, when I had that first hand come up, there's about 50% that have either been on an association board or been a part of something. So you're well aware of leadership and wanting to get involved in your community. So I applaud those that have already been on boards, and I'm going to continue to applaud those that are going to get on more boards over the next bit. And why is this important? Specifically on agency boards, we've been given a mandate by the Premier of Ontario, who has actually said by 2018, guess what? It's the end of 2016. So in a year, we want to try and get that 15%, right? Even from an agency, maybe it's a little bit more, but not much, to 40. It's a huge task. So when I looked at that and started hearing what Premier Wynne said, we need the leaders in our community to understand what that means and the resource capacity that that's going to take to be able to fulfill that mandate. So that's my call to action to everybody today, is we truly do, and I'm not here to talk about targets, but we truly do have a call to action in the province of Ontario, specifically in Toronto with ULI, WLI, and by the Premier, to do what we can to get our agency boards, at minimum, to a 40%. We're on the heels of a federal government who has also suggested that on their board, which is one of the most important boards from a political perspective, cabinet, that they went to parity. So federally, we've gotten a parity board, female and male, which is fantastic. Provincially, not there yet. Agency-wise, definitely not there yet. And corporate boards, for sure not there yet. So there's my call to action to all of you. We've got a bit of work to do, and we're going to start that conversation today. So let me please, I'm going to introduce all the panelists, and as I introduce each one, I'll call you up so that you can meet and greet. And we have just a wonderful group of individuals that has dedicated their time to come today, so we thank you all. But indulge me, because their bios really are worth listening to and hearing about, and then that way, through their panel discussions, they don't need to necessarily talk a lot about what they have done. So I'll start with Aretha Phillips. Aretha began her career at Queen's Park. She worked for Premier Bob Rae and the Attorney General and the Minister responsible for women's issues. And that's really what started her love for public service, and she went on to do a number of different roles within the public service, including TD Ontario, marketing, community arts programming at Harbourfront, public education at Elections Ontario. All of it for Aretha was with the goal of engaging communities across the city. She's also worked at the City of Toronto Office of Partnerships. She's developed some innovative private sector and public sector partnerships to enhance the delivery of vital city programs and services. And Aretha has recently joined the City Clerk's office as the Manager of Public Appointments, and is responsible for the ongoing recruitment of the residents to sit on the city's 63 agencies, boards, and corporations to make sure that those boards and corporations reflect the needs of our city and the diversity of our city. She's an incredible volunteer. She's sat already on numerous community and arts-based boards and lots of committees, including Black Business and Professionals, Harry Jerome Awards committees, the Real World Film Festival in Sistering, which is a social service agency serving the homeless, and marginalized women and low-income women in Toronto. So just a wonderful panelist. Aretha, can you please come on up? Next, please let me introduce Debbie Rosati. And Debbie is an accomplished corporate director. She's an entrepreneur. She's a fellow chartered professional accountant and a certified corporate director, so she does have her ICD.B. She's got more than 30 years of experience on many areas in business, including technology, consumer, retail, and private equity and venture capital. She's an experienced board member on, many different committee chairs, including audit committees. She actually spends a lot of her time providing extensive knowledge as a corporate director in the areas of financial and enterprise risk management, corporate strategy, transformational change. She's worked with MBA programs, corporate governance, and CEO and board succession planning. So very knowledgeable in the dialogue that we are talking about today. Currently, her many corporate engagements are as a leading corporate director and chair of the Nominating and Corporate Governance Committees for Sears Canada, as a corporate director and chair of the Audit Committee for Next Gen Systems, which is both on the TSX and the New York Stock Exchange, and as a member of the Department Audit Committee for Correctional Services Canada. She's also a co-founder of Women Get On Board, so somebody that we definitely want to listen about and get her experience and knowledge. She does many of these kinds of sessions to help educate, and frequent speaker on just numerous members of committees. On top of that, she was selected as a Diversity 50-24-2014 candidate. She was also recognized in 2012 as one of WXN's top 100 Canada's most powerful women in the corporate director category. She has had numerous other director roles, and I won't list them all because you've now certainly gotten a level of the importance and power of this young woman. Dan, come on up. Catherine Lee. So Catherine is absolutely a seasoned executive in the financial services area. She has served as president and CEO of GE Capital. She's a leading provider of financial and fleet management solutions to mid-market companies across Canada and has more than 800 employees. But prior to being at GE, she was also at Ernst & Young. She did quite a stint with the audit area and advised many corporations on corporate insolvency and restructuring. She's currently a member of the GE Board of Directors. She's actively involved in Business Leaders Council for GE Canada. She's an honorary co-chair of the Greater Toronto Marketing Alliance and a champion for GE Women's Network, GE Asian Pacific Forum, and huge community involvement on all fronts. She currently serves on the board of BCE Inc. In the Audit and Pension Fund Committee. She also serves on the board of Colliers International and the Audit and Management Resource and Pension Committee. And she's a trustee and director of Jazz Air Income Fund as the chair of the Audit, Finance, and Risk Committee. She definitely is a woman that has had huge experience in so many areas and levels, both in business and at the executive table. So Catherine, we're very much looking forward to hearing from you. Come on up. And our final panelist is Raul Bardwaj, who's currently the president and CEO of the Institute of Corporate Directors. Actually, before I continue, Raul, who here does have their ICD? Who here has their ICD.D? Okay, so another opportunity, there's 3 of us in the room that have that distinction. So there's another opportunity to find a way to talk to Earl, who I'm sure will give us a bit of insight. He's just brand new in that role, but he's an unbelievable, accomplished leader. He's an executive and director with a long and successful track record, both on the business side, the community side, and the not-for-profit sectors. And he was recently the president and CEO of the Toronto Community Foundation. He was a corporate lawyer in his early career and subsequently served as the vice president for Toronto's 2008 Olympic bid. One of my loves is sport, so we loved Agro. He currently serves as a director of Metrolinx, the Rita Hall Foundation, and the Community Foundations of Canada. He was a past chair. He was the chair of the 2012 Ontario Games, the co-chair of the 2015 Ignite, Toronto 2015 Parapan Games. He's a chair of the Toronto Downtown Jazz Festival, a director of George Brown College, and a director of Upper Canada College and Stratford Festival, just to name a few. One of the key things that he brings to our city is just his incredible sense of city building. He's been recognized and received the Queen Elizabeth II Diamond Jubilee Medal for that. He was named one of the 50 most influential people in the city of Toronto by Life magazine and was recently named the Leader Council of the Institute for Leadership at the Ivey Business School, of the Quadrangle Society at Massey College, and the ultimate list of social CEOs on Twitter. I really quite like the ultimate list of the social CEOs on Twitter. That kind of changes the whole new digital disruption. Truly, his vision for Toronto is magnificent, and I've had the pleasure of knowing Ro for a number of years, and he is as humble and wonderful in person as he is on paper. So please come on up, Ro. And finally, let me introduce our moderator, Manisha Thacker. And she is a seasoned executive and has served as Vice President of Asset Management leader in GE Capital from 2013 to 2016. She's responsible for a $3 billion portfolio of real estate loans across the country. She's also part of the Canadian leadership team at GE. Manisha is incredibly active as a volunteer in many women's causes, and she's currently on the Women's Leadership Committee as well. And I'd like to, where is she, Manisha? Where's Manisha? Oh, there you go. I'd like to just introduce Manisha as one of the great new moderators that we are going to see in many of our future ULI, WLI sessions. So I'm going to turn the mic over to Manisha, who will lead a discussion with these four accomplished panelists. And please start getting your wheels turning as you're listening to the dialogue. Thank you.
We'll just test out the mics. If you got a little bit of feedback, fix that. Thank you. Okay, good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm thrilled to be moderating this esteemed panel here today on such a hot topic. I'll start with a few stats and complement what Tony's already done in the introduction. In 2014, Canadian regulators implemented a comply or explain rule for all TSX companies to disclose the number of women on their boards. That number currently sits at 13%, up a mere 1% from the year prior. 46% of companies still have 0 women on their boards, and 66% of companies have no diversity policy in place. Given all the discussion and scrutiny, there's clearly one trajectory for women on boards, and that is up. So the question becomes, are you ready? How do you prepare yourself when the opportunity arises? So let's jump in and ask our panel our first question. This will be for all of the panelists. I'll start with you, Raul. Tell us about your first board experience, how you obtained it, how you prepared yourself for it, and some of the challenges you faced.
Sure, thanks. And thanks for putting the context of this conversation, because it really is a constructive sort of one way to go, and that's up, which is kind of neat. When you think about boards, there are boards of all different sorts, and often people think about boards of directors of large cap public companies. But as Tony mentioned, there are all sorts of other boards, crown boards, non-for-profit boards. And it's really interesting to ask yourself, where do you want to try to start on that ladder? Because in many ways, trying to go right to the very top at the beginning doesn't always make a whole lot of sense, because you don't really have context for what's going on inside a boardroom, what the dynamic's about. So in my particular case, I had a very fortuitous door opening that took place when I was a young lawyer. I started getting involved in more community activities, and ultimately I was invited to join the board of the United Way in Toronto. Now, this is a large, complex nonprofit, but I had 0 experience on a board other than some basic work that I was doing with some clients. And 2 things that really drew me to that at that time. One, it was a real passion of mine. So once again, if you kind of take that kernel of thinking, what are you really interested in, whether it's in the corporate space, nonprofit, or even a crown one, if you have some personal connection with the mission to begin with, you're already in the right space. At least that's a good place to start. So my first entree into all of this was literally being invited into an area where I actually had quite a bit of passion and interest. And the next thing you know, I was sitting in a room with some of Toronto's most distinguished individuals, both corporate, political, and community. And I probably did the smartest thing I could do, and that was I shut up and I listened for as long as I could, because it was really an interesting learning experience to get some context around what the architecture is of a boardroom, what the roles of the committees are, how they all work together, and how governance actually enables the strategy of the organization. And it happened to be one where they had very good orientations underway, and we had an opportunity to really get into the weeds of what the business model was. So it takes a long time to really get up to speed on it, but in my particular case, it started in a nonprofit environment, but a somewhat complex one, at least in terms of Toronto, a lot of cash going in and out, but you learn along the way, and that was really a very strong foundation for all the other board work I've done since.
Okay, great.
So I'll speak to a corporate board. Back in 2006, when Air Canada was spinning off its subsidiaries, so Loyalty, Maintenance, and Jazz Air, Robert Milton was the CEO and chairman, and so he was looking to fill the boards of the to-be public entities. And so I guess my first point of the day would be relationships and network, because I think one of the reasons the percentage that 13 or 15% is so low is because boards, directors still get nominated, selected by kind of network, relationship, word of mouth. Whether you like it or not, that's still the stat today. And so network and relationships are very important, because when chairs need a director to fill a spot or to set up a new board, they will have their list of people that they want to go to, or they will have a team of people who will have a list that they will go to. So networking and relationships are very important.
Okay, great, thanks Kathy. Deborah, same question for you.
Same question. I'll speak to corporate board. I have an entrepreneurial background, and so most of my opportunities have come through my network. So I was serving as a CFO of a technology startup in Canada, in Ottawa, and we were going through an M&A transaction. And my peers, I spent a lot of time raising private equity funds, and so I really got to know that community. There was a startup that was looking for someone that had financial expertise and startup technology experience, and I sort of checked that box, and I joined it with 5 other males at the time, and this was 2000. And within 9 months, we were acquired. The quickest liquidity event I've ever had. Has anyone had a 9-month liquidity event? Well, I did. Learned a lot in a very short period of time, but through that period of time, I also was asked to join a venture capital fund. And through joining that venture capital fund as a general partner, one of your responsibilities is to manage the portfolio companies, and typically you would serve on portfolio companies. So I had 3 or 4 companies that I was serving on their boards. They were all technology startups. But it was early in my career from a governance perspective. I hadn't taken the director's education program. I don't think it was around then. So I had to do a lot of observing, listening, understanding. But I think relationships, to what Catherine was saying, is really important. And I think knowing what you don't know is really important, and having your own advisors around you, whether it's a formal advisory board or it's advisors you can go to. I always knew that I didn't know everything, and so that I would have an informal network. I have mentors that I would go to if there was issues, concerns. I also knew if things weren't jiving, that it was really important to kind of have those conversations outside the boardroom. So I started my career very young on early stage technology companies, and then evolved it from there. But it really came from my network, which was deep in Ottawa at the time, the technology community. And it also came, I knew that I was being sought after for a particular skill set, which was financial expertise, but I also didn't want to always be viewed as chair of an audit committee. And so I've made points throughout my board journey and my board career to make sure that I would be considered for other committees and chairing other boards. I've chaired not-for-profit boards as well. So again, back to opportunity, it came knocking through my network.
Thank you. Aretha, same question. Can you tell us about your first board assignment?
So I'll talk more from like an association perspective. Many years ago, I was asked to be the chair of the Heritage Awards, which is an annual event for the Black Business and Professional Association. I knew nothing about it. I think I must have just made eye contact at the wrong time in the meeting. I just looked up. Next thing I knew, I was chairing something. So I thought, this is interesting. I've got great experience. I'm passionate about what this organization stands for. What nobody did tell me, though, was, you need to raise $500,000 for sponsorship. We need to sell 1,000 tickets. So it was a huge undertaking, and it might seem, the fact that it was an association, that it wasn't a lot of responsibility, but I had to learn sponsorship, budgeting, finding and managing over 300 volunteers, getting broadcast rights. It was a huge piece, so it allowed me to learn sort of a gamut of skill set that I wouldn't have, that now helps in other things that I do. You'll also find that there's a lot of women in that sort of association volunteer space. There's not a lot of men, so women will talk a lot about the fact of other opportunities. I think for me, what's important when you do join a board is finding something that you're passionate about, finding a cause that's important for you. And I think as women, we like to see that social return on investment. What are my hours that I'm taking away from family and friends? Where is this going? What difference am I making? So always be thinking about that as you sit on a board. So even if it's Toronto Hydro to an association, me being on Hydro, what difference can I make? Can I change the conversations at that board level? Can I make them change how they do things in their business when they start to think about women in the senior levels? And remember that when you're there, it's important to bring other women up. It's not for you just to be the only one sitting there, but to have that conversation to say, there needs to be more of us here.
Right, good point, thank you. Bro, can you tell us some of the pros and cons of being on a board?
Sure, so this is a full day conversation. We're still thinking about pros and cons.
2
But-
minutes or less.
2 minutes. So if you start on the pro side, you heard about passion, you heard about impact, personal growth. I can't imagine a space where I have learned more through listening and watching diversity take place in front of you. And this is long before people were talking about diversity on board. This is literally being around a bunch of people who are committed to particular impact and outcomes and problem solving together. There's everything from accountability to enabling to structures to financing to setting strategy and working at all that together. And there's very few places that you can go into where you're going to learn about how they all fit together in real time. You can't read a book about it. You literally can't. But this is where you actually learn to see all that happen. So I think from a personal development place, it was fantastic. Learning in ways I never would have before, and getting outside of your comfort zone, but in a relatively safe environment, depending on what type of board you're starting on. Fantastic learning journey. If I had to start to think about a couple of the cons, leave personal liability aside, sort of the legal part of it, because you've got to be cognizant of that. That's always a potential downside. But the other ones is, I think sometimes people underestimate just how much of a personal commitment you have to make when you're on a board. And you really do have to be cognizant of knowing that you're going to be joining a team where you better be looking around the table and seeing who else is going to step up to the same extent you're supposed to, and that you're prepared to do that. So for instance, the more complex organizations, more complex boards, you're reading on weekends. And not the weekends that you choose to read on, but the weekends you have to read because the board meeting's coming up. I mean, there's a lot of volume on this, the more complex you get into. So it's a trade-off. You're learning a tremendous amount. Your personal impact can be extraordinary, but there's a price you pay too, and that for some, if you're curious and you're passionate about the mission, it can be really exciting, but don't underestimate the time commitment.
Deborah, anything to add on that topic? Pros and cons?
Well, I think on the con side, I think you've said everything. I'll just give one reference point from a time commitment. On complexity, was serving on a special committee as an independent board member, and it was very intense, and so we had a mandate we had to fulfill. It was a transaction that was going on. And I remember one Sunday, I kid you not, we spent 9 hours on a conference call. And again, it's one of those things, sometimes you've got your corporate calendar, so you know your planned meeting schedules, but sometimes events happen outside of your 9 to 5, and a lot of times those conversations and dialogues happen after hours just because people at senior levels have time to have those conversations. So there's been many a time on a weekend where I'm either prepping my material because I got it Friday night because the team, the management team had time sensitivities, they had to get it out to the board. It's Friday night and you've got the meeting Monday morning. And you really don't have time to have kind of conversations with your board members in advance of those meetings. So you come in, whether it's an audit committee or HRCC committee, you come in and you've had to sort of synthesize the data, the readings, and you're kind of going, I wonder what my colleagues are thinking. And so there's a lot of dialogue and a lot of things, but sometimes I've had a situation where I knew that what the material that came to us in a very time-sensitive manner didn't make sense. And so I was chair of the audit committee at the time, and I made sure I had a conversation with the audit firm and with the CFO, because I wasn't going into that audit committee without conversations in advance. And so I think it's important from a pro and con is you have leadership, you have a leadership role that you've taken on if you're chairing a committee, and I think that's great leadership. But you also need to understand when you pick up the phone and when you need to step in and have conversations. And so I think a lot of that learning for me has come on the opportunity to develop and grow. I've gone from early stage technology, private, to large public, to Crown Corp, to chairing not-for-profit. So I've had a myriad of different organizations, different sizes, different stages. And the complexity, I guess, at the end of the day is what I get drawn to. So to that time commitment, always be mindful of what it might take. And two, I would say you have a big responsibility. And I think when you're working collectively at the end of the day as a board, you're making collective decisions. And sometimes you have to stand up and stand up for what you believe in. At the end of the day, you come out of that boardroom united. And so you might not necessarily agree with the end result, but you have deliberated and made a decision as a board. And so from a pro perspective, it's really, you've got to have courage, you have to have accountability, and you really have to be strategic in your thinking, and you also have to make sure you don't go down into the weeds. There's the nose in, fingers out concept everyone knows about, where, you know, management's job is to manage day to day, and as a board, you have an oversight role. So you really have to balance that.
Kathy, you've had some very large corporate board roles, and you've also chaired some committees. What special skills are required for those roles?
So let me step back for a second, because I think it's important to understand that as you're trying to figure out how to get here, you have to know what you want and what you're allowed to do. So what I mean by that is, I realize I have to update my bio, because a year and a half ago, when I knew I was leaving GE Capital, because all of GE Capital was being sold around the world, including Canada, I had this once-in-a-lifetime, first-ever opportunity to figure out what my next chapter of career life was going to be. And so, kind of given what I'd done, my age, and kind of my family situation, I decided, you know, yes, I want to go on a couple of boards. I am CEO of a full-time job, a private company, but I also wanted to give back. So I wanted to work on a cause, but I didn't know exactly what that looked like. So the first couple of calls that I got were to go on public boards, so BCE and Colliers. Yes, they're similar in terms of public, large, but so different in terms of, you know, BCE is widely diversified. There's 14 directors on the board. The chemistry, the culture, and what we deal with is very different from the Colliers Real Estate Board, because Colliers Real Estate spun out as a public standalone entity only just over a year ago. The founding CEO and chairman, by multiple voting shares, owns a good 40+%. And so the conversation and is very different, right? So, you know, to your earlier point about a director is oversight. I was so used to doing that there was a huge transition of I want to do, but it's like, no, Kathy, you're a director. You can't do, you can only advise. But on the Colliers board, because of just kind of the interaction, the culture, the chemistry, there is more operational conversation, whereas at BCE, it's very much about governance. So very different. So to answer your question, yeah, you have to have certain competencies, whether it's audit, nomination, pension, M&A, global experience. But it's also, you know, a chemistry of working with your directors. And that all being equal, I think, you know, the conversation that we're going to talk about diversity is, if you are equal in terms of competence and expertise, the drive for more diversity on all boards, whether it's private or public, is so huge right now that this is like we're all kind of collectively riding on a wave right now.
It's a good wave to be on.
Yeah.
Bill, can you tell us a little bit about the ICD designation, how it compares to other director courses, some of the benefits of it?
Sure. So why don't I give you a little bit of a snapshot. An ICD, short for Institute of Corporate Directors. That in and of itself, though, is a little limiting. We've got 11,500 members across the country, so it's an association. Corporate, Crown, family, nonprofit. So they run the whole gamut. And the idea is that when you're a member of the ICD, you have member benefits. It's actually about $400 to join, $395 I think. But if you go on the website, there are lots of tools to help aspiring directors in whatever area you are to grow along with it. And one of our magazines is on the table and a little bit of handout. But it's about the full life of a corporate director or a director. So those who are starting out and those who are public boards, there's lots of information that will help you stay along with the dialogue. We have a number of education courses, including what's known as the DEP, the Director's Education Program. It's run in partnership with Rotman in 11 biz schools across the country. And those who graduate from that can write an exam and be tested for something that's called the ICD.D. And that's a designation like a postnomial, so you actually put that after your name on your business card, that sort of concept. And more you're finding organizations on their skills matrix, on their governance committee, when they're looking at, we want diversity on our board, we want finance, tech, geographic, whatever you're looking at. They'll also have a little box there for ICD as well. The concept being that people who've gone through the Director's Education Program have had a rigorous sort of training around what governance is like. Now, the more experience you have, the more relevant it is and the more board ready you are. But for those who have had actually even less experience, it's still a fantastic way to understand governance, nose in, fingers out being one of the great little pieces, and how it all fits together to enable organizations to perform better.
And at what stage would you recommend doing any of those courses?
So this is always an interesting question. So for those who have no interest in sort of commercial space, we have nonprofit courses as well, and Crown courses. But for those who are interested in actually getting the post-nominal, if you've got some board experience, that's certainly helpful, but senior executives in complex organizations who've been around the boardroom but may not have actually been on boards are still capable of really benefiting from that as well. It's quite a remarkable thing to go in there, even if you've got a lot of governance and board experience. The way these programs are set up is they take it all apart and put it back together again. And if you've never done that, it's quite a kind of eye-opening experience.
Okay, great, thank you. Deborah, can you tell us a little bit about what motivated you to co-found Women Get On Board, and how have you seen diversity evolve over time?
Thank you. I get to talk about Women Get On Board. This is great. So it probably started about 16 years ago when I started joining boards, being one of the few women. So, if the stats are 13%, it probably was even less than that. And I would be asked over the years, how did I get on my first board, knowing that I wasn't the only woman on a board. I spoke at Women in Leadership conferences much like this. So I titled my slides, Women Get On Board, because I wanted to make it like, come on women, let's get on board. And through those, and then just one-to-one conversations with women over a coffee, a glass of wine, really I'm motivated by empowering other women because it really is about leaning in and helping others. And so if you can be, for the women that are up here this afternoon and the women that have come, and Tony, in your opening remarks, really is a great opportunity. And I think you said, we have nowhere but to go up. And the mandates are out there provincially, federally. There's a 30% club. And so all of this going on in late 2014, the OSC puts out their Comply or Explain rules. And so it was just an opportunity in time and where I was in my career to launch Women Get On Board. We are a member-based company. We connect, promote, and empower women to corporate boards. We do that. We do events. We had an event last week on how to be an effective director. We do workshops. We're very complementary to ICD in conversations of being, affiliated through some way with various organizations. At the end of the day, it's universal to advance more women to corporate boards. We are very complementary to the organizations out there, and so my personal labor of love is to see more women around the corporate boardroom and Women Get On Board. If you're interested, there's some handouts, some blogs I've done on how to build your profile, how to build your corporate board journey. I have some cards about membership, and you can go to womengetonboard.ca if you want to learn more about us. So, thank you.
Aretha, what does the City of Toronto look for when filling its board positions?
Oh, thank you. We have over 70 different agencies, boards, and commissions, and they range on the continuum from community-based boards work at local arenas. We have a number of quasi-judicials where people will hear hearings from residential disputes. We have our service agencies like Exhibition Place, the Toronto Zoo, and we have some corporations as well, such as Toronto Hydro, TTC. What we're looking for that one added extra value. We're looking for people who are interested in serving the city, who are interested in making a difference in the city of Toronto. So you can have your qualifications. We have council-approved qualifications. There's a list of them. We're also looking to know, why do you want to serve? What difference can you bring to the city? And I think we're also looking at what extra things do you do besides your job that can change that conversation, because your role on our boards is to represent the views of the residents. You have to be able to also look at that and understand that there's several different types of residents and the information that you give. So I think that's sort of what we're looking for. We have different time commitments. We're in the middle right now of a big midterm recruitment process. We're looking for 70 people to sit on a variety of different boards and agencies. I encourage you to go to our website, Serve Your City. And I think the other piece I want to add is we are a government, these are government agencies, and it's very different to sit on a public board than it is to sit on a corporate board. There's a whole other level of, all our meetings are open to, a majority of our meetings are open to the public. So you've got to be prepared for that. A lot of the information is FOIable, so whatever you say comes back. You can't say, oh, let's go meet at somebody's house. These meetings happen in city council and council chambers, and everything is recorded, which is not to deter anybody, but it is a bit of a different perspective. We have a lot of code of conduct pieces that are important and specific to the city of Toronto. That being said, I don't want to dissuade anybody. It's just something else that you need to think about, because the rules of engagement are different. But I do encourage everyone to check out our website, serveyourcity.ca, and take a look at our appointments, and I will provide some information here today about it.
Okay, thank you. Let's just spend a couple minutes talking about diversity, and then I'll open it up for questions for any questions anyone has in the room. So lots of topics, lots of discussion around diversity, whether a quota is needed. Is there anything else that can be done other than a quota to help increase diversity on boards? And I'll ask all the panelists to comment on this. Let's start with you, Will.
Sure, so let me give a little context from an ICD standpoint. So we're members of the 30% Club, and this is something recent. I don't know why it took so long, but we're thrilled to be there. Supportive of a lot of initiatives around enhancing diversity on boards. I might add too that one of the member benefits is something called the Directors Register. So individuals that want to be considered for board positions can actually have a profile on our register. We have a full-time person that'll coach you through how to enhance your resume and your offering, and walk you through how you can connect. The reason I put that out there in that way is we've got about 3,500 women on our register, and about 1,000 are ICD.D designations. So we've got search companies and other companies that will be phoning us to say, listen, we're looking for women, for audit or technology, whatever the case may be. So we're helping promote that whole notion of diversity. I don't want to dodge your question around quota and targets, because we've been very much behind the targets and comply or explain. You'll see over the next month there's going to be a little bit more literature coming out from us on some things that we're actually doing to advance diversity in the boardroom. I don't want to spoil it for you, so you can just keep your eye open, stay tuned. It's going to be interesting, and you'll see it'll make a whole lot of sense. I mean, the concept about whether diversity is something you want in the boardroom, we think that's kind of behind this question, is how to do it now. And the question of whether you have quotas or not, that's a really challenging one. We've been really promoting, more targeting, more targets than anything. It's obviously been very slow pickup. The question becomes, I think, that once you put a quota out there, there's going to be a rush to having people. You put it this way: it's odd for me to want to put myself in the place of a woman, but being someone of diversity as well, I would never want to be a member of a board solely because of my diversity characteristics as a part of a quota. So I've always found that to be a bit of a challenge, but we'll see how that evolves.
I can hear. It's a perfect segue, because being on the other side of it, I can tell you in the last 12 months, I've had, for myself personally, 10 different board opportunities that have come through. And so there's a lot more awareness. And the conversation starts like this. You get the call. It's not a search firm. It's usually through your network. And the conversation starts, we want diversity on our board, and that means code, we want a woman. Then they go to the next box, we want someone with financial expertise, so you check that. And then depending on the sector, if it's retail, consumer, time. So those are conversations that I've had in the last 12 to 18 months that have come forefront, more so than in the last 16 years. The great opportunity, I've been able to say, you know, thank you very much for my consideration. I have capacity issues right now, but I've got a group of women, we're building a member base. Can I put some women forward through shortlisting? And that has been really powerful. So that's just been individuals. We're a startup, women get on board. And so ultimately we'll have an online directory and we'll get our companies will make consideration and think, okay, we're going to go look for, we want qualified women, who do you have? We will have a directory as well, not as large as yours. So, but I want to say though, the conversation starts with, we want diversity, and I've been getting those calls, first of all, for myself personally. And so if there's more awareness, that's great, but let's translate it and be agents of change and make it happen, right? The numbers aren't reflective of where, they're disappointing. Nobody, I mean, it went from 12% to 13%. Hardly anything to get excited about. So I think we all can be agents of change in our organizations, and there's lots of different organizations out there and different ways to do it. There's a lot of really qualified women, and I think this group here could be that next generation of women corporate directors.
So I think that the conversation now, which has been going on forever, like decades, right, is not about, is it a good idea? I think the 80% of the population would say, absolutely, it's a good idea. It's about the execution. So there are now many more associations that have the lists. The supply is definitely there. So it's how do we accelerate the speed, right? It's how do we get the 15 to the 20 to the 40 in a couple of years? Like, that's a huge challenge. So if I thought that quotas would work for all the right reasons, like there have been examples in Europe and in Scandinavia where they've set quotas and it's worked because there are enough supply of diverse people who are experienced, who qualify. So, right, so that's a check. You just need to connect them to the people who are hiring them. That's easy to do. But for some reason, it's just not happening fast enough. So if I thought that quotas were done for all the right reasons, I'd say let's do it, because that will definitely accelerate. But I'm not convinced, because I'm kind of tainted, that the hiring people will do it in the right way.
Yeah.
And that's
well, and to that point, the last thing, I want to be a quota. Nobody in this room wants to be a quota to fill that, again. But if that's the acceleration point for all the right reasons, then absolutely.
And Aretha, over to you.
So I'd have to say that I'm sort of for, I like to say targets or goals versus quota. I think it has to be purposeful. You have to actually make people accountable and responsible. It's the only way to affect change. And then eventually, we don't have to have those quotas. It would just be ingrained in how people do the work that they do. For us at the City of Toronto, I'm happy to report, we have 40% representation of women across all our agencies, boards, and commissions. We don't do as well with the corporations, but we are at 29%, which is still better than the Fortune 500 in corporate Canada. So we are very happy about that. And I think it's part of our policy to look at diversity as we are doing our recruitments. Again, my team doesn't make the final decision, our counselors make the decisions. The counselors are also part of the boards that people would be sitting on. But we've recently had a motion from Councillor Holland around gender diversity, so we will be reporting out every year on how we're doing with our gender stats. And as well, there's been a commitment to achieve gender equality. Now, what that means, I'm still sorting that out, but we make it a big push. And when we are looking at our selection committees, we do say, you might want to look at what we're doing here. We don't have enough women represented. There's not enough diverse candidates represented. So we do those checks and balances. We had a bit of a scandal a while back with the TTC where we had appointed all men. So we are avoiding getting into that kind of space.
But how can that happen in the 2016? How can that happen?
Because people just aren't thinking about it. They're not thinking about the need for that type of change. So
sorry, I am a little passionate about that.
Yeah, it's hard to believe, but that did happen. Council did reverse that when they recognized that there was no representation. So we are very committed to that, and it's part of the work that we do in organizations that we work with.
Great. There's obviously lots to talk about, but let's open it up to a few questions from the audience before we wrap up. And so Alex has a mic, if you just want to raise your hands. Anyone?
You knew I would ask that question. Good afternoon, thanks very much for your time. This has been a great conversation. A question about people, women with experience. They have 10, 12, 15, 17 years worth of experience, but they don't have an SVP in front of their name or a C in front of their title. How does one go about parlaying really great work experience to catch the attention of those who are looking for female board members?
Great question. Does anyone like to take that?
I'll start. I would say that, again, and I think it was already commented on the panel, was you don't start off in a big public company board. So it's a journey and you want to plan it. So maybe you start serving on advisory boards and maybe you start serving on municipal boards. You start building your leadership profile. So, and it's more about your accomplishments in those leadership roles, whether it's advisory board or otherwise. And so I think if you have skills like there are, so for instance, does anyone know who Michelle Romanoff is? She's on Dragon's Den. She just recently, she's in her late 20s, has sold a few companies, very successful entrepreneur. And when her company, the company she was serving on the board, Whistler Blackcomb, was sold, she was the only board member that went on to, Vail Resorts in her late 20s. So did she have all the long, she was very entrepreneurial that gave her the CEO. So I want to use that as an example. But she was chosen for that new board role because of her social media background and her experience there. So I think if you've got skills and expertise, you may not have the S or the C in front of yours, but if they're skills that are sought after, you can demonstrate your leadership.
Does anyone else want to add to that?
I would add to that as well, is when you're looking at certain boards, take a look at who's already on there. See what skill set they have and what skill set you have that might set you apart. What added value can you bring? Because you can bring that up at the interview process to talk about you and how you can distinguish yourself from others.
I might also add that if you're in an organization that's big enough, make this a part of your own leadership journey within that. In other words, if you've got a sponsor that you're working with internally that's making sure that you're on track with your own professional development, make that a part of it, saying, listen, being on an external board, whether it be nonprofit or whatever, would be a great part of your own personal development. And if they can take some vested interest in doing that, that starts to open up doors as well.
Jen, you have a question?
Hi, so the question is, it's a macro question. It's sort of going to what Anne just said. What are the real challenges or barriers that are actually stopping the like me attitude and we'll say being comfortable to attract the right talent to your boards, whether it's a public or private or nonprofit, that's really stopping? Because we're talking about the process, which is great to know, but really where the challenge where it exists, it's not the process, it's how do you actually get spotlighted? Because there's a lot of women, just take a look around here, who have the skills, have a leadership, have all those boxes ticked off, but what's happening is we're missing that connection. And that's why with the new legislation that the Ontario government passed in regards to public companies 2-3 years ago, the needle has not shifted. So that in itself needs to be addressed more. And what would you say is how do we spotlight it without making us getting uncomfortable that we don't want to talk about it, but getting us uncomfortable to talk about it and address it?
I think we're going in the right direction. I heard a stat, I don't know if it's accurate or not, but I think it's in the ballpark where something like 80% of directors are appointed by word of mouth versus like a formal search firm or going to an association list. So that's slowing things down. So if you're not on a short list already, and keep in mind that especially, the corporate boards, right? There's only so many of them in Canada. There's anywhere from let's say 7 to 14 per board. And the term is like 10, 15 years and or 75 years old. So it's not like very many of these come up very often. So if that's the sort of board you're looking for, it is hard, right? Because that's kind of like the 1 or 2% of the population. It's not a big number. Obviously, there's so many other boards that, you know, this panel's talked about, which widens that number. And so then that exercise is, how do you get known in that area that you're seeking to get on a board? Yeah.
So what would you say that would be? Like, you know, someone who's, you know, who's good with financial, say, and coaching and leading teams. How do you then spotlight it? Like that element, I think we need to know more.
It's no different from looking for a job that you really, really want. So knowing what you know and what you're good at, you know, when you're looking for a full-time day job, you kind of know the top 10 companies you want to work for. The board's no different. You want to know the top 10 boards you want to sit on, whether it's not-for-profit, private, public. Go after them and say, this is what I can deliver.
And to that point, if you want to get spotlighted, it's about your thought leadership and how do people, you know, so there's social media, there's speaking engagements, there's lots of ways for you to get recognized in your area of expertise. So people, you know, start talking about you, right? Start talking about why they should connect with you. And it really is letting your community know, let them know you're looking for a board opportunity, and here's my value proposition, and here's what I can contribute, so.
Anisha, I have a question you want to ask you. One of the things we keep talking about is resource capacity. So a part of, I would say the challenge is the supply may be there, and there may be individuals who know what they want to do. But the unfortunate part is the resource and the capacity to be able to serve is just daunting. So there is, even I totally agree with you, Kathy, with that. There may not be that many from a corporate perspective, but when you are trying to get to a 40% number as an example, or to a 30 or a 50% number, in the room that we have here, you know, people have a day job, people have a family, and Earl, your comment was bang on in that you better be prepared to put in the time because you actually don't want to be the quota and not do a good job. So I think one of the key challenges that we all face in this room, probably in the next, well, 2 years for sure, but I would say the next 5, is ramping up enough and not killing ourselves. Like the fatigue factor for most women that I'm seeing, especially that are either at a C-suite level or at an executive level or on a board, is big. So how do we translate that resource capacity? Because I, you know, from my perspective, most people, they're competent, they care, they want to do great things, they're doing a lot. There just isn't enough time and effort. So that's a challenge, and I'd love to hear your thoughts.
I'll start, and I'm sure it'll be carried on by my fellow panelists. I would say kind of what Ro said earlier is that if you really want leadership development and you are in executive position, you would go to, whether it's the chair of your board, your CEO, and say, listen, this is part of my journey, here's what I want to do. I had an example of a chief legal officer who is well-versed in, well-respected in her profession and in her job. And she had a conversation with chair of the Nominating Governance Committee and her CEO and said, listen, I love this company, I know I'm contributing, but I'm at this stage where I also want to develop myself here, so how can we work together? So I think it's kind of, and then knowing that, whatever that might be, whether it's, you know, director's education program or whether it's the director's college, you want formal governance, how can your organization help support you in that journey? Because you can't do it on your own and you have limited resources and capacity. So I think it's like a lot of organizations allow, you know, employees to get engaged in the community. This is part of your development, whether it's community or corporate. And then there's organizations or companies that you're conflicted to go. A lot of financial institutions, you can't serve on any other corporate boards. You can do a lot from a not-for-profit perspective. So I think is getting that opportunity for the company you're working with to help you in your journey.
Okay, let's open it up for final thought.
Hi, this has been fabulous, and I think for the women in this room and understanding a journey on how to get there, some of the tools and the thoughts and ideas. But I have a question, and we talk about capacity, and what about the generation behind us? So I have a 14-year-old, and I always translate this to her, what's her world going to be like? And so I challenge, my question is how do you outreach to a world of young girls to say, these are the opportunities that are before you, and we talk about networks and we talk about social media. I mean, how do we prepare that generation? So we're not talking about lists that people have to go to, and we're not talking about quotas, but we're talking about young women who are ready to jump into that role and who are prepared and have a path before them. Not when we're mid-career, not when we're later on, but when we're coming up and growing and understanding. And I think that that truly is the challenge that as women, as mothers, that really we should be focusing on. Not to dismiss we have a role and a place to play in this as well, but there's a lot of young girls behind us who are looking for those opportunities, and how do we outreach and focus on them? So I'm interested in your perspective.
I really believe the world's changed. So my kid's story is my son's 15. When he was around 10 or something, there was a front page article on the Toronto Star featuring like a dozen teenage girls who were being honored for either great marks, community service, entrepreneurial spirit. And each of them was being asked by the reporter, the same questions. And one of the questions was, what do you think about feminism today? And so I'm sharing this article with my husband and son who are in the car, and my son says, well, what's feminism? So I explained that a long time ago, there was this movement of women because they weren't getting a bunch of things like pay or rights or this or that. There was this ceiling, blah, 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 and it still kind of exists today, that they weren't getting opportunities because guys are, they were getting more of them. And he said his first reaction was, that's crazy, like we're all equal, that's crazy. So I think our kids have that in their brain. They're not burdened with our past. So they're just wired differently, which is good for them. And then, it's the basics of working hard, being smart, and, going after what you want and making sure you got the values and the expertise to go after it.
And maybe sort of taking that maybe 10 years out, so post-university, because they've done their education. There's organizations like Lean in Canada. I've gone and spoken on a panel there, and there were women, I saw them, 25 to 35, that age group, and they are really thinking about their careers, and they're thinking about community service, and they're thinking about their board journey. So I was really enlightened to see it starting earlier in their career as opposed to mid-career. And then a lot of alumni events, they're doing that for the various, I just spoke at my alumni Women in Leadership, and it was on, leadership development. So I think those conversations about, early on, glad to hear that, but even to that sort of next stage, Lean in Canada has been doing some great work in Canada.
As a father of both a 20-year-old daughter and a 17-year-old son, the demographics are in favor of the women. If you start to look at the professional schools and the universities and how that makeup has changed dramatically, we could be having a very different conversation about diversity in boards in another 30 years.
Yeah. It will be like, what were they talking about anyway?
Okay,
So I just was asked for the City of Toronto, we make a concerted effort to do outreach to different groups, and youth is one that we encourage. We have a few boards where we're looking for two youth to sit on them, so we try to nurture and foster the opportunities through that, because we know that youth have a big voice and they need to be involved in that city building conversation, so we do that.
Okay, let's just open it up to the panel one last time for final words of wisdom and tidbits of advice.
Get involved. I think, you heard get on board. I think that's a great idea. Find out what you're really interested in, start small, build up and grow with it. ICD, check us out as a member. We're happy to help you along your own journey.
And it is a journey. So, like preparing for anything, relationships, networks, joining associations, they all help.
Check out, get on board. We are member-based. We are looking for executive members that are looking for that, how to plan their board journey, and for women that are looking to build their board portfolio, because have already transitioned from executive. We're not quite that younger generation, but we affiliate and we're out educating. And I would say just be fearless. As women, what I find, my conversations I have with women, they're a lot about what I can't do, and you got to say, no, you can't do it, because I don't have that same conversation with men. So, be fearless in your pursuit of boardroom, and you can do it.
I'll say we've got 70 opportunities that are coming up. So I think what I'd also say is that it's a collective responsibility. It's the responsibility of those that are doing the selection to go to those spaces where women are, and not just those traditional ones like the golf club or like the golf course. Go to where women are, because we do things. It's also the responsibility of our male allies to be talking about the benefits of having women on boards. That's a really important conversation, because they're already at the table. And it's important for us just to get out there and apply. And maybe you can't start at the top end with the corporations, but start somewhere and start to change that dialogue.
Great, thank you. Well, we've only just skimmed the surface of this topic. We could spend hours more talking about it. But I know there's coffee and dessert for everyone. So you all have table hosts who have experience in board work and governance. So please continue the conversation while you enjoy coffee and dessert. And more importantly, please continue the conversation outside of here, because that's what's going to make change. So I'll just ask Vivian to come up for final remarks.
Wasn't that fantastic? Hi, I'm Godine Seabay, and I'm the Regional Managing Partner for Ontario for McCarthy Tatro. I wanted to say thank you to everyone. Thank you so much for joining us on this very important discussion. We are thrilled you're here. The one thing I wanted to say is the federal government, when they heard about this program, they wanted to be on the panel as well, but they could not be here. So what they have done, and I have cards, and these are cards for the federal government, because they too are looking for qualified women. And when they heard about this organization, they said, okay, I wish we could send someone from Ottawa, but they couldn't today. But I have cards, I will put them on each of your tables, and please look at the federal government as well, because they too are looking for qualified women. I wanted to say thank you to our amazing panelists, because I think what you've heard today are stories of inspired and inspiring leadership. And I think I'd like all of you, when you're talking and among your tables, we have table hosts, they are at the tables as well, speak and ask about journeys, changes that they've made. And the one call out I want to do is I think we need more women in the C-suite. And I think that's going to help as well, changing the dial on getting more women on boards. Because if we have more women in the C-suite, I know, Anne, your conversation about SVPs and so forth, but if we had more women in the C-suite, maybe that too will help change the conversation and build networks. The other call out I wanted to do is you've heard a lot about mentorship and sponsorship today. And so I also encourage all of you to mentor, sponsor, and champion people in your organizations and encourage them to apply for board positions. I know I'm getting a lot of calls now too, saying, all right, can I list 10, I need 10 women. I need 10 women on this, I need 10 women on that. So it's great to know where the networks are, where the board registers are, and how do we make sure that we direct people and get them involved as well. So thank you very much to all our panelists and table hosts. We have a small gift. It's a small gift. But we also made a donation to the United Way Women Gaining Ground organization. And I too was on the campaign cabinet of the United Way, so I know the importance of them in the community. And Women Gaining Ground is an organization empowering women through education and employment. And what I have to say is some of the women there that we have helped, one of them just is now going to Harvard. So that just shows the change we can make within our community. So let's start the conversations. Let's go to the table hosts. And if you could participate in the discussions, we're delighted to have you here today. Thank you.